Hi, I'm Susie Cambick, and I'm passionate about two things, cooking and personal growth. And that's what this channel is all about. Welcome to Cooking with a Side of Coaching. It's getting spicy in here. Today, we're kicking up the heat, literally and figuratively. I'm sharing with you one of my family's favorite dishes. It's a must try. It's chicken tikka masala. It's an Indian dish packed with bold spices, deep flavors, and a bit of fire. But you know what else can feel just as fiery? Anger. If you've ever found yourself wanting to pack a punch like spicy food, you know what I'm talking about. Let's get into it. So, as we make this spicy dish, we're also going to talk about anger and specifically emotional dysregulation. What it is, what causes it, and what happens when our emotions get too spicy to handle. And stay till the end because I'm going to teach you a technique that will allow you to cool things down in your house if you or a family member struggles with emotional regulation. And trust me, just like a perfectly balanced dish, emotional regulation is all about knowing when to turn up the heat and when to let things simmer down. Emotional dysregulation is when your emotions hit like a sudden burst of cayenne pepper, unexpected, overpowering, and sometimes a little too much to handle. It's when a small trigger leads to a reaction that's way bigger than the situation calls for. One moment you're fine, and the next, bam, you're in full on meltdown mode. As I cut up this chicken into bite sized pieces, I want to break down emotional dysregulation for you. According to Psych Central, emotional dysregulation is an inability to manage your emotional states. This means when you're unable to control feelings of sadness, anxiety, and anger. It also means you have an intense reaction to situations, and they are often disproportionate to the event itself, making it very difficult to return to a calm state. I want you to think about your emotions in the same way. When we don't chop them down into manageable parts, they can overwhelm us. Just like no one wants to bite into an entire raw, hot pepper, we don't want to let our emotions build up into something that burns everything around us. Speaking of fiery emotions, I remember when my oldest son was younger. He really struggled with emotional regulation. If something didn't go his way, his emotions would ignite like hot oil in a pan. 1 second calm, and the next second sizzling. If he felt he was right about something, he would become very defiant and argumentative. If I set a boundary or told him no, he would explode, yelling, arguing, and completely shutting down. One particular day, he was about 2 or 3 years old. My mother in law was over, and she was helping him clean up his toys from the living room before dinner. He had this Bob the Builder doll that had a tool belt with some tools tucked into it. He picked up a tool that had become dislodged from his belt, held it up, and said, "Bob the Builder," trying to communicate that the tool went with the Bob the Builder doll. My mother in law dismissed what he was saying by taking it from his hand, glancing at it, and saying, "That's not Bob the Builder." She proceeded to head down the stairs with that and other toys in her hand to take it to the toy room to put it away. He stewed. He was so upset and became triggered. He paced back and forth for a couple of minutes and then announced, "I'm going downstairs to tell Bima, yes, it is Bob the Builder." And down he went to argue with her that he was right and she was wrong. He had a full blown meltdown over something that to me seemed small, but to him It was everything. He was angry. His fists were clenched. His body was stiff with frustration. I heard him arguing with her down there, and she wasn't getting it. She didn't understand how that little piece of stuffed fabric was Bob the Builder. And my first instinct? I wanted to match his fire with fire. I wanted to calm him down, to explain why he was overreacting. But then I realized when you add more heat to a burning pan, it only makes the flames bigger. So instead of reacting, I chose to pause. I took a deep breath, I softened my posture, and in that moment, I reminded myself, he's not giving me a hard time or her a hard time. He's having a hard time. And that simple shift changed everything. So you just watched me cut up about 5 large chicken breasts into bite-sized pieces. I've divided those 5 breasts into 2 separate bags. I'm going to make tonight's dinner using one of the bags, and then I'm going to gift my future self a second bag that I will put in the freezer so that when we want to have this recipe again, it will already be ready for us, or at least the first part of it will. So to each of these bags, in order to marinate the chicken, I'm going to add 1 cup of Greek yogurt. And then I'm going to add several spices to that yogurt. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice to each of them. You'll see me use a half of lemon in each. And then 2 teaspoons of ground cumin is going to go in the bag, as well as 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon, 2 teaspoons cayenne pepper, 2 teaspoons freshly ground black pepper, and 1 tablespoon of minced fresh ginger. And then I am also going to add a teaspoon of salt. For the ginger, I like to freeze the raw ginger root in the freezer, and then I use a small grater to grate it. I find that this is the easiest way to mince up that ginger. You see me now adding all of those ingredients that I mentioned to each of these bags. Once I add them, I'm going to give them a nice good mix by sealing them up and then massaging the yogurt and spices all into the meat until every single piece is covered in the marinade. If you have never cooked Indian food or tried Indian food before, this is a great starter recipe. It gives you all of the authentic flavors of Indian food without really the fear of what you're eating. So, a lot of these spices that you're being introduced here, you've also had in other applications and other recipes, but probably have never had them as a combined set of spices. And as you can see, it's definitely not as intimidating as it seems. And I assure you, you will love this recipe. Like I said, this one is a recipe that my family loves. My boys absolutely love this. Probably not something that I would have cooked for them when they were younger children, just because of the level of heat. But as they've gotten older, they very much enjoy spicy foods, and so this one is a go-to, and they absolutely love it. Once we get the marinade all mixed in and every single piece of the chicken is covered, we are going to go ahead and pop this in the fridge to marinate for 1 hour. The other bag, as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and throw it into the freezer once I've combined all of that, and that will be sitting and waiting for me when I'm ready for it. Super awesome hack. Nice way to be prepared and ahead of yourself for a future meal. Once these are done marinating, I am going to skewer these pieces of chicken onto some skewers, and then we will move on to the next step. Emotional dysregulation can be caused by mental health conditions such as anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, and ADHD, or certain neurological factors. Certain brain imbalances can affect our emotional regulation as well. But I want to talk also about the fact that traumatic events, childhood trauma, or stressful life events can trigger emotional dysregulation as well. Emotional dysregulation can even be passed down through generations. If your grandpa didn't know how to regulate his emotions, your father likely didn't either, and therefore you have a higher likelihood of lacking the appropriate skills to manage your emotions. Living in a situation that feels unsafe and chaotic can trigger strong emotional responses and can impact development. Emotional regulation is an important developmental step during childhood. A child's emotional development is highly influenced by whether they can develop secure attachments, particularly with a responsive caregiver, but also with their peers. The good news is the brain is malleable, and you can learn the skills and retrain your brain to regulate your emotions. When I watched as my son struggled, I knew I needed to break this generational pattern and get us all the help we needed. His emotional dysregulation caused me to be very dysregulated at times as well. There are 3 things I did to help my son overcome his emotional dysregulation. I want to teach them to you so that you can do the same. You all know that I love to eat, so I'm going to use that as an acronym. Here is the EAT method for emotional regulation. E, educate. I educated myself. It turns out my son was later diagnosed with ADHD and ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. I had no idea what either one of those 2 things were, and so I had to learn. I wanted to learn. I educated myself on those diagnoses, on the associated behaviors. I spoke with many, many professionals. I spoke with our therapist, his pediatricians, specialists like neuropsychs, school psychologists, social workers, speech therapists, occupational therapists, family members, and so on. I read articles educating myself on what triggered his outbursts. I journaled to learn what was triggering his outbursts. I tried to learn what was going on inside of him, how to help him. I educated myself on how to love somebody different than me. I researched different personalities, learned about different love languages, learned about attachment styles and the importance of your attachment with your parent or caregiver between the ages of 1 and 6 years old. So educate yourself. Being informed is your superpower going into a situation you haven't navigated before. Watching this video is a great first step. A, attend. I attended to my child's need. This does not mean I gave in to his every desire, though he is good at making his point and pleading his case while simultaneously triggering my anxiety. I needed to be there for him and help him. I needed him to feel safe. Instead of telling him he was wrong or trying to plead my case as to why he just needed to do something different, I learned to listen to him. I heard what he was saying underneath the anger. It was almost never about the thing he was mad about. It was about an underlying feeling, and he needed to be validated. It wasn't Bob the Builder, but it was a part of Bob the Builder. He wasn't feeling understood, which led to a chronic feeling of not being smart enough or not feeling smart enough. So, next time you're experiencing something like this with your child or family member, get curious about what's really going on. Start with trying to identify their feelings and acknowledge their feelings. This is what it means to attend to your child's needs. When you feel the heat rising, pause. Just like you wouldn't dump an entire jar of cayenne into a dish without thinking about it, don't let emotions take over. Leaning in and acknowledging their feelings is like adding a splash of cream to a spicy sauce. It softens the intensity and brings balance. T, teach. Finally, I taught him how to identify when he's being triggered. I taught him to pause before reacting. I taught him how to identify and label his feelings so that he can communicate in a way that is effective and not confrontational. Just like the ABC method that I taught you in the last video. I taught him that he has every right to his feelings and that no one can ever tell him that his feelings are wrong. That it's important to understand his values in life and to use them to guide his behavior instead of reacting impulsively. This won't happen overnight, but if you keep working on it, if you keep adjusting those seasonings, so to speak, you will get it right. Emotional regulation, like a well balanced dish, takes time, patience, and the right ingredients. Educate yourself, attend to emotions with care, and teach the skills necessary to simmer down instead of boiling over. Because with practice, you'll create something truly nourishing for both you and your loved ones. Next, we're going to make the sauce for the chicken tikka masala. I love to double this recipe because we love extra sauce with our rice and to dip our naan bread in. So to this large pot, I've added 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 cloves of garlic chopped, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 jalapeno pepper finely chopped. I hardly had any paprika left in my house, so I substituted with 2 teaspoons of cumin and 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper. I'm letting all of those spices toast up in that butter, which will release the flavors even more from those spices, and it will give it a delicious, deep, bold flavor. Next, I added 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce and then gave that a nice stir before adding 2 cups of heavy cream. Initially, this sauce is going to look pink because of the red tomato sauce and the white cream. But after those spices get incorporated, and especially after we add the chicken, which has beautiful color on it and browning from the grill, the overall sauce will turn a very deep reddish orange color. I'm going to let this simmer on low heat and I'm going to let this go for about 20 minutes until the sauce gets nice and thick and beautiful. So here you see I've added the skewers to the grill and I'm grilling the chicken on each side, turning periodically to make sure that the chicken is completely done. I make sure that I use a thermometer to check the temperature to make sure that the chicken has reached 165 degrees. If it's slightly under that, it's okay because you're going to be adding it to the hot sauce, and so some of the heat from the sauce will cook it as well. Back to the sauce, we like to eat ours with some peas in it. And so I've added probably about 2 cups of peas, maybe a cup and a half of peas to the pot. And I'm giving that a nice stir and incorporating that. And then next, I've taken those skewers off of the grill and I'm adding the chicken directly into the sauce. And again, this will allow some of those flavors from the marinated chicken to incorporate into the sauce, and they marry together very nicely. And it will also bring in some of the coloring from the marinade and the cooked chicken as well. This is beautiful. It's finally coming all together here, and this is absolutely amazing. I cannot rave about this recipe enough. You guys have to try it. I mentioned earlier that we eat this with rice and naan bread. You'll see that here at the end of the video. I did not include the naan recipe in this particular video, but I will be releasing another video and it will have the recipe for the homemade naan bread. Again, if naan is not something that you've ever made homemade, seems intimidating, flavor completely unmatched to what you will find in the grocery store. So check out that video. You can see a preview of the naan bread right here. So here I am dishing it up. I have a bowl, and to the bowl I'm adding, this is just some jasmine rice. I do like basmati rice with this dish as well, but this is what I had on hand. So we have a little bit of jasmine rice going into the bowl. And then next we are going to top that with this beautiful chicken tikka masala with the sauce. You can see that that sauce is no longer a pink sauce, but is deepened in color and is a little bit more of an orange sauce at this point. A nice deep orange reddish sauce, and it is absolutely delightful. Again, has some spice, but it's beautiful. I'm topping it with some cilantro now, which is my favorite herb that goes alongside this, and I'm putting a piece of naan bread on the side. You guys, this is delicious. You've got to try it. It's bold, flavorful, and perfectly balanced. And that's exactly what we're aiming for when it comes to emotional regulation. Balance. It's not about eliminating strong emotions, but about learning to work with them, just like we work with spices in a dish. If today's message resonated with you and you're ready to overcome emotional dysregulation, I have something special for you. I've created a signature coaching program designed to teach you the necessary skills to master emotional regulation and manage anxiety. It's a 6-month program that will help you overcome your emotional dysregulation and transform your anxiety into a life of balance and peace. If you're interested in learning more, book a call with me. I'll leave a link to my calendar in the description box below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. Also, please share this with anyone you know who may benefit from it, either the recipe or the personal growth, or both. Your support helps me keep creating content that brings you warmth, not just to your kitchen, but to your heart and mind as well. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate you. Until next time, remember, spice up your food, not your emotions. See you in the next one. Bye, friends.